Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live stream. This is the first time I'm hosting it in this format. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. It's going to be a very busy session. Uh, just a quick updates from my side. The last 2 weeks were pretty busy. I was in attending the EDS, European Desalination Conference in Las Palmas, and then WEX in Valencia. And both shows were really interesting. The only challenge is that because of COVID in Q1, all the shows were moved to Q3, Q2, and then basically in June. So a lot of things to attend to. But both events were excellent, completely different type of target audience and also content. The good news in WEX in Valencia, we won Desalitex won the award for innovation in water marketing, and it's a great testimony to what our team is doing in Africa. So what I loved about it is that the three members of the jury were all aligned, and they gave the award to Desalitex despite having big competition and other companies competing on the same award. So it was great achievement. So today what we'll do, we have three topics that we're going to share. First one is on monkeypox, and we'll talk about the monkeypox and its impact today on the world, and also how do we look into it from the water side. We'll also talk about day zero, and we'll have Benoit from South Africa joining us. And last but not least, we'll talk also about the autopsies, membrane autopsies, and how we do them, and what are we trying to get out of it. So for now, I think we can start directly, since Benoit has not yet been able to connect. I think we can start with Professor Sopsi, and he's joining us from the US. So thank you, Professor, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So we're going to talk today about monkeypox, and I think you're probably the right person to talk about it because you're sitting also on the WEF group to study all of this. And so just a second, I'm having a little bit of technical. So before we start, if you want to post any comment and then post any question, feel free to go ahead, because I can then pull them up for our guests so they can interact with the questions. So Professor Sopsi he's retired from the Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering in the University of North Carolina, but at the same time he's also on the committee of the Waterborne Infectious Disease Outbreak Control (WIDOC) at the WEF Federation. So, Professor, welcome on board.
Thank you very much.
So I think you have a few slides to share with us about the importance of monkeypox and how we should be looking at it.
I do. So I can present those slides whenever
Please.
you're ready, and I can hopefully share my screen. Let's see if this works. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
If not, I'll send you.
I can share the slides if you want from my side.
That'll be fine.
Okay, excellent.
Let me go back to the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I hope everybody can see what's on the screen, and the title on my slide is "What do we know about monkeypox and its risks in water and wastewater?" As was already stated, I'm associated with the Waterborne Infectious Disease Outbreak Committee of Water Environment Federation, and I'm a research professor at the University of North Carolina. I'm no longer a full professor. I retired. So next slide. What we want to do is consider this monkeypox from the standpoint of water professionals, people in the water and wastewater field. And what we know is that this virus, which has been around for a while, reemerged in something of a new form in terms of what countries are affected earlier this year. And many more countries had infected people in Europe and the Americas and the Middle East and more or less around the world. And many new cases showed up, even though this virus was well known and had been discovered back in the 1950s, but it was primarily based in Africa. And it has now become a worldwide concern. And that's why we want to focus on it today, because now potentially more people could be at risk in other countries. And of course, whenever a new pathogen appears that is of health concern, one of the first questions that gets asked is, what is its presence in water and wastewater, and is exposure from water, wastewater, fecal sludge, those sorts of wastes a concern? So this is an enveloped virus. It's a large envelope virus. At the bottom of the screen, you can see on the left its internal structures. We won't go into the detail about them, but it's a large brick-shaped virus, as seen from the two electron photomicrographs on the right, different versions of the same virus. It's relatively large. It's about a couple of nanometers in size, depending upon the direction in which you measure it, because it's a rectangular shaped virus. And our group has been interested in trying to understand its significance in water and wastewater. So next slide. So on the next slide, which hopefully comes up soon, you'll see some basic facts about this virus. It's endemic, as I said, in Central and West Africa, but it has now spread worldwide. And I previously mentioned that it was discovered in 1958, and it's a zoonotic virus, which means that animals harbor it. The exact host for it in the environment is still not clear, but it's probably some kind of squirrel or rodent. But that is not clear at this point, although it does infect many other kinds of animals, different squirrels and even monkeys. So the good news is that this virus, which is related to smallpox virus, which has been eradicated as of 1980, the smallpox vaccine, which is still globally available, is protective against this virus. And that's good news because, well, old people like me were immunized against this virus. Younger people have not been immunized, but at least there's a vaccine available if this virus begins to spread more quickly. Next slide. So what do we know about the transmission of this virus? Well, it's spread mostly from direct skin-to-skin contact, from body fluids and in the lesions that appear on the skin, which we'll show pictures of in a bit. It's in the pustules and lesions that appear on the skin, and it's also possible that you can get exposed from contaminated surfaces, so-called fomites, such as bedding materials, towels and such, that also come in contact with the virus. And it can also be spread by respiratory contact, that is from material emanated in coughs and sneezes and such, but only from close by contact. It's also possible that it could come from infected animals, as I said, infected rodents, and the ones that are of most concern, of course, are in Africa, which is where the virus resides, but it could affect other animals. somewhat rare and infrequent exposure might occur from airborne transmission over longer distances, but that's not very common. And at this point, there's no evidence that this is transmitted by wastewater or water or human fecal waste. So those are unproven routes of transmission, but we are concerned about it because as this virus has appeared in new places, it could be a concern to the wastewater industry. So what we know is that it's also potentially asymptomatic, which means some people might be harboring it, but not be apparently infected. And what we know is that it primarily is for transmission occurring by direct intimate contact, including lately sexual contact. And most of the cases that have occurred recently this year have been from direct sexual contact, primarily from men having sex with men. Next slide, please. So the virus causes these characteristic skin lesions. When you get exposed to the virus, the incubation period is typically about a week to a week and a half. But the symptoms that appear first are fever, muscle aches, fatigue, headache, and then finally the rash appears later. Once the rash appears, then that's when you become infectious. And the infection can last for 2 to 4 weeks, occasionally longer. And the rash tends to spread from the upper part of the body down to the characteristically the arms and hands. And it's these lesions that appear on the skin that are of great concern because that's where the virus is located in high concentration. The recent outbreak underscores the importance of trying to understand what the risks are from this virus and how we can protect ourselves from it. But what we know is that because this is a zoonotic disease that could come from animals, we have to be worried about exposures to not only infected humans, especially when they're in this form of showing the lesions, but also from the rodents that could also be infected. Next slide, please. So we're interested in the properties of the virus relative to its persistence in the environment and to disinfection, and what kind of risks it might pose to wastewater professionals. So like other large so-called envelope viruses that have this outer layer of lipid material, it's expected to be less resistant than the typical viruses found in water and wastewater, which are the non-envelope viruses. Those are more persistent than this virus, and therefore it can be more readily inactivated by common disinfectants, such as alcohols and by chlorine, free chlorine especially, and by quaternary ammonium compounds. So it is relatively possible to control this virus with these chemical agents, especially on non-porous surfaces. The current wastewater and drinking water treatment processes that we use are expected to be protective because the relative persistence of this virus is less than many of the other pathogens that we're concerned about in water and wastewater. However, it's recommended that workers always, especially wastewater field, always take important personal protective equipment precautions around wastewater as a general rule and general practice, and that if we take those precautions, we're going to be protected from this virus and the many other viruses and other pathogens that are potentially present in wastewater fecal wastes and contaminated waters. And as a special concern, whenever a new virus starts to spread globally, we should make sure that if we're connected to the water community and industry, that we keep in touch with local health authorities and be aware of what we know about the potential presence of the virus in communities that are served by our wastewater facilities. Most of the concern about this virus is with these bodily fluids, such as coming from the skin or the infectious lesions that appear on the skin. And what we know is that these contain the infectious virus, but we can kill the virus with laundering and with heat processes, such as laundering clothes, etc., bedding material, and that should prevent further spread of infection, even within households. So those are the usual kinds of so-called infection protection and control precautions that are taken. Next slide, please. So other information relevant to water or wastewater professionals is that it is shed, this virus, in animal feces and possibly in human feces, but the virus has actually never been detected in human feces. It's been detected in feces from monkeys and other animals, but the infectious virus has never been detected in human fecal matter, although it is potentially present in human urine, because smallpox virus, to which this is related, was shown to be present in human urine. To date, infectious monkeypox virus has not been detected in water or wastewater, nor has its nucleic acid, its DNA or genetic material. The likelihood is that the DNA might be detectable in water and wastewater, but that has not been shown yet. There are other viruses that we can detect by detecting their nucleic acid in water and wastewater, but we have not even done that yet for this virus, and it's very unlikely that this virus will be present in an infectious form in water, wastewater, fecal sludge, and so on. What we have to do as wastewater professionals is maybe add this virus to the list of pathogens, such as SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19 disease, by wastewater monitoring, so-called wastewater-based epidemiology. I guess there are considerations of that. Maybe this virus may be added to the list of those that are currently being looked for. But at this time, the bottom line is that this is a low risk to humans from human waste exposures, such as from sewage, fecal sludge, biosolids, or various waters. Next slide, please.
I think we're done, and this was the last one, Professor.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yes.
thank you for your comments and presentation.
So that's just a quick overview, and the information that I've just presented is mostly from the fact sheet that was produced by the WIDUC group and is available from the Water Environment Federation. If you remember the Federation, you should be able to get it because it appeared in a newsletter just a week or two ago. But if you have trouble finding the fact sheet, you can always contact me and I can send it to you because it should be widely distributed to those in the wastewater community.
Thank you, Professor. We'll not have time for more questions, but this will be published. I mean, it's a lot of contents. I learned a lot on this in this presentation, but I will have to review it slowly and read through all the documents. So thank you very much.
People are always welcome to contact me if they want more information. I'm happy to help those who have concerns about this virus.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Thanks.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Next, I'm going to welcome Benoit, and he's joining us. Benoit Leroy is joining us from South Africa. And Benoit, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you perfect. Bonjour and hello to everybody.
Hello, welcome on board. Thank you for joining us. We want to talk today about day zero. You know, a few years ago, I was in South Africa, in Cape Town. I had my leadership team in Cape Town. On purpose, I took them there because it was in the middle of day zero. And what better to take your water team to go and experience what it means. And for me, it was really kind of a shock because everything was, you know, kind of locked. So you go to the shopping mall, all the toilets are tap water are locked except one small drizzling one, and then really like everywhere it was the same challenge. So I think you're the best colleague to talk about the topic. And my first question: what is day zero? In fact, what is it about?
So day zero is I think a term that's been borrowed from wars and the likes. But so we classify correctly or incorrectly day zero as the day when your taps run dry. So the local water authority in South Africa, it's a municipality, as the water service provider, is unable to provide water on a consistent basis. So so Cape Town missed it just as it was saved by agricultural input that bought Cape Town 27 days, which then had the rains and the likes. So from that perspective, Cape Town managed to save themselves, but through some very high tariffs, water shedding, water pressure demand management, which saved considerable amounts of water, good PR campaign, unfavorable and unpopular water tariffs and the likes. And I think the people in Cape Town are very aware now of the potential threat. The irony in South Africa at the moment is that we have over 90% level, the average for our national dams, but we have one area that really has no water. It's not the Eastern Cape. So the Eastern Cape province, one of our 9 provinces, has it's over 80%. The water's fine, except in the Nelson Mandela Bay, which is a metropole made up of a few towns, and Port Elizabeth, which is now called Kebeka, would be something that people know. The 1820 settlers arrived there from England, but so its immediate vicinity has not had the usual rain for 7 years, and we allow the situation to we watch it, and we just see the situation get worse and worse. And the main reason for this in Kebeka has been that there's a political tussle. So water is a backseat in our country, unfortunately, for the last decade or two, but it took an absolute backseat whilst the political fights took place and officials weren't able to do their jobs. People have not been paying. There's been very little, let's say, governance, and also the non-revenue water is at 39%. This is a municipal number, and I think it's very conservative. Our national average is 41%. And physical leaks is in Nelson Mandela Bay, 75% of that. So we're talking 85 megaliters a day, and they have not halved their consumption from 390. They're 290 megaliters a day. They should be at 150. And folk get fickle when we put into a corner, and people are saying, "Well, I'm not going to reduce it and close my taps because you, the municipality, are leaking because the infrastructure is broken." So that's really what's brought us, to this. And it's a social problem. It's a political problem. There's no lack of technology, engineers, and materials.
So what is the solution? I mean, there is no technology gap. So what is the solution?
So the solution, from my perspective, it's multifaceted. So it's not simple. But the first thing is become an active citizen. Demand performance from, we've got 3 tiers of government: local, provincial, national. Demand performance, elect people who will perform, and unelect and remove people who don't. And we haven't done this. We're young. We're not even 30 years into democracy, and we haven't figured out how it works. So now we've got coalitions in the ruling party has lost virtually all the metros, and we've got coalitions in there, and they're very delicate. And as soon as somebody sneezes, the coalition breaks apart, somebody else comes in. So there's no continuity, and there's a lack of leadership. We have a circular economy in our political circle. We are recycling politicians like nobody else in the world that I've seen. And, it's as bad having somebody in a position for 30 years as a politician, but we have them for 3 months and they're gone. They get recycled for and redeployed and all the likes. So it's a political issue that I think our constitution talks to how to sort it out. People need to be more active. Putting the price up of commodities is really unacceptable, especially with food prices skyrocketing with the Ukraine crisis at the moment. So, but also we've got to put in our basket of costs in the month, water is it's gone up by 450% in the last 10 years, and people are still not watching it. It's going to start biting. So now we have to, so I think water is becoming, like energy, quite an important thing in our lives. The difference in energy alternatives, water isn't. It's H2O and that's it.
So my last question, because we're running out of time and we still have Dr. Nuria. So is it a South African problem, or you think it's global? And which, if global, what cities are next?
I think it's a global problem. It is hitting, for example, northern Italy at the moment because of the heat wave. And Rome, a couple of years, 3-4 years ago, same time as Cape Town, nearly ran out. So, and we've got the West Coast, California is also getting close to potential day zeros. So I think we've got the stochastic situation with climate change, big populations, urbanization, and South Africa is no different. We've got twice the temperature rise of the global average. So we've got things moving, becoming unpredictable. We've had floods in KwaZulu-Natal, where Durban is, called eThekwini now. And yes, we've got too much, not enough water. I think it's a global issue. South Africa is at the tip of the continent and is getting the brunt of it because we've got a collapse of governance and we've got these vagaries of nature, extreme population growth. In the last 40 years, we've doubled our population. And the water reserve was fully allocated 20 years ago, exactly 20 years ago. So we've got a perfect storm, but I think we've also got the perfect storm for solutions. And that's really where we have to come in. We've got solutions, but it's multifaceted, it's complex. So we need better politicians, better officials, and better citizens. And because the climate is not going to get better.
Thank you a lot, Benoit. Thanks for your contribution. We stay in touch. Thanks.
My pleasure. Goodbye.
Next, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Pina. So, Dr. Nuria Pina Garcia, how are you doing? Good? I cannot hear. Maybe you're still on mute. In the meantime, I'll pull your slides. I know you have a few slides to discuss. We still cannot hear you. So it was a good discussion with Benoit in the meantime, talking about the challenges. I think we still cannot hear you, Nuria. I think it's still a big challenge in South Africa, and it's not just South Africa. It's going to be multiple cities, and the politics that Benoit mentioned is not really specific to South Africa. I mean, politicians recycle. It's something very common in high growth markets. Can you hear me, Nuria? Yeah, I still cannot hear you. If you want, what we can do, because anyway we are short on time, you will not have enough time for your slides. Maybe we can do it on the next call, because I still cannot hear you. So maybe we can do it on the next call, so then you have enough time for your discussion. Okay. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. There was a few interesting comments. We still cannot hear you, Nuria. It's strange. I was able to hear you earlier, but I don't know what's happening now. So what we'll do these are the technical challenges of broadcasting. We're like kind of live TV now, so we'll always have these challenges, and we're learning on the way. So we had very good comments this week on this podcast. It was the first Restream session. It's a new platform I'm using. It's better than typical Zoom broadcast. So here's a comment from Andy Philip. Great, not very helpful, hopeful about better politicians and better people when water is concerned. It's a good point. Also, Andy has a history in some of the emerging markets, so he understands the challenges also. So thank you all for joining. What I will be doing, I will be cutting this into 2 sections and then reposting them on LinkedIn, so you can review the presentations of Professor Sobsvi and also the discussion with Benoit. Thank you all for joining. If you have topic suggestions, and speakers invite, leave them in the below section. What I'll be doing, I'll try to make this consistent. It takes a lot of time and energy to prepare, but I'll try to have these sessions consistent so we can bring in the water community all together. Have a great evening or day, wherever you are. Thanks everyone for joining.